welcome everyone to the latest edition of the RevCast Podcast, brought to you by Revenue by Design. I'm Michelle Casey, and I'm delighted that today we're joined by serial entrepreneur in the hospitality technology space, Adriaan Kleingeld, CEO and owner of HSDS. Adriaan is a recognized pioneer within revenue management technologies and is very well placed to talk about the transformational shift that revenue management is going through and its adoption of technology and machine learning. And incidentally, HSDS are also very welcome and proud to announce them as a gold sponsor of Opportunity 2020. So, Adriaan, welcome. Over to you. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Michelle, thank you very much. I find the word pioneer slightly scary, so I don't know whether I would consider myself as a pioneer. Quickly to my background, I started working in the hotel industry as a young man of 17 and probably did a pretty classical sort of hotel upbringing from the kitchen, restaurant, reception, sales, until I became manager in a hotel. Then I started an event company in Germany and a seminar broker, which I did for 10 years. And then I decided it was time for something new. I moved to Romania, which is probably not the first place people would decide to move to, and started a software company. Because I didn't know anything about software, I decided I better work at least in an industry where I have some understanding. And that's basically how we started here in Romania 20 years ago. We visited a lot of hotels and said, what do you need? What do you want? And that's basically how we started 20 years ago.
Perfect. So you're obviously as I said, very well placed with your experience to comment and to observe the shifts that you've seen over the last 20 years. What of all the things you've seen, what do you think are the most important shifts over the time that you've been developing and building software for the hospitality industry?
Well, 20 years ago, it was amazing. I mean, what are the shifts? First of all, www, the internet. I remember 20 years ago, hotels didn't even have a CD with their hotels for clients. They had paper brochures, fixed pricing, and well, we can't believe it anymore, but it was all pretty old-fashioned and old style. And what happened with the internet was hotel websites, was a little company called Booking.com. One of the first OTAs started in the Netherlands. I don't think anybody at the beginning took it seriously.
No.
And this revolutionized distribution in the hospitality industry. And I mean, there were a whole lot of things, whether it's the Pegasus switch, whether it's the invention of rate shoppers, a whole lot of information, a lot more dynamic, and customers finally being able to shop around. This revolutionized the speed at which things happen in the hotel industry and the necessity, obviously, for all kinds of software which would speed this up to their manual process up.
Yeah, I was working for lastminute.com in the early 2000s, and our big competitor was Expedia, and Booking.com. I remember just starting off as they weren't even part of the game. They were considered small fry, and just seeing how they've completely revolutionized the industry is quite phenomenal, really.
Well, listen, lastminute.com is a beautiful example of the problems the hotel industry was going to face and is facing. And that's running behind what's happening rather than planning for what will happen. But anyway, listen, this makes me feel really old if we can remember these things.
Yeah, but
But
we started
this
very young, Adrian. We started very young,
we
so
did. Listen, we did start very young, but that was a very, very exciting phase. I
yeah,
think the hotel industry has sort of been playing catch up and remains playing catch up. The title of the wonderful event on the 11th of February in the Emirates Stadium, Man versus Machine. I think this is actually a really good description. As long as the hospitality industry sort of has the feeling it's man versus machine rather than man using machines, but this is a fundamental problem. I've listened to some wonderful podcasts you made with Alexander from Atomize, with Bastian from PI or BI Intelligence. I've listened to revenue managers who know everything about revenue management. I've listened to clever people telling us what is probably possible. And I sort of come to the conclusion that we make things more complicated than they really are. I own a software company. My CIO looks at me when I ask him, can we do this or can we do that or can we do anything else? And he says, Adrian, we're a software company. We can do whatever we like. The question is, why are we going to do it? Who's going to use it? And what's the real benefit? So the sort of abracadabra that I hear a lot, I find misleading. I think what's really, really important, whether we talk about revenue management or any other aspect in the hospitality industry, what are the problems that hotels are facing, and how can we resolve these problems in a way that they understand? Because having this sort of epic gap between if I have a headache, I take an aspirin or an ibuprofen or a Saradon or whatever all these things. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that, but I take a pill for my headache. I don't immediately go to a neurosurgeon or have a brain scan. So if we keep things simple, I think we have a chance of success. You called me or us pioneers. We came, I think, with probably the first price optimizer on the market about more than 10 years ago. Let's say about 10 years ago, called Power Your Room. And the price optimizer was called Price Your Room. And when we went to clients and when we went to hotels, they were baffled. They loved the sound of it, but they weren't really sure what it was going to do and how it was going to do it. Now, all of a sudden, we have Atomize, we have Pace, we have Beyond Price, we have Climate RMS, obviously blue chip ideas. We have Duetto, and there are a lot more. So I'm not discriminating, but there are a lot of revenue management companies that are spending a fortune educating hotels why it would be a good idea to use a revenue management system. Now, on the one hand, before we start talking about AI, algorithms, and all sorts of complicated things, simply the time saved by using probably any of these systems is massive. It's impossible for a hotel to calculate and recalculate and distribute prices properly manually. It's impossible. So any hotel who says, I don't need it, and I don't know, I do it with my Excel and my Excel macro, and I hire people in some very low paying wage country, that's nonsense. It is impossible. So the benefit of all these new, young, exciting companies in the revenue management domain is massive. So being the pioneer, I think, is awful. It's an expensive joke, and it's not the place you want to be.
No, no. Do you think you're talking about hotels? You know, the technology's out there, and the hotels are still very much of a mindset. In some cases, not all. We've seen that shift, which is brilliant. But do you think that there's a lot of hotels out there who are still relying on, or don't put technology at the heart of their revenue management operation? Do you see that changing? Why do you think that's happening? Why do you think? Is it an educational issue? Is it a cultural
It
issue?
is, well, listen, I mean, you are answering my questions beautifully. It's an educational issue. It's that the hospitality industry is changing completely. Before it was simple. You had your reservations department, your reservations manager or reservations clerk did whatever they did from gut feeling, and possibly of your gut feeling and experience. And now the wealth of information and data and the choices to be made with all the distribution channels, it is impossible to do it in the old school way. But I think it's technically everything is possible. Technically, absolutely anything is possible. But for anything to work properly, it needs adoption. It needs to be adopted and used. What I see, I'm lucky, as opposed to all the other revenue management software companies. I happen to own a software company, and one of our products happens to be revenue management software. So we also build solutions for third parties. Now, what we find, or what I find, is whether this is a hotel management company, a small group of hotels, a bigger group of hotels, there's usually one or two really clever people who know what they're doing, who've studied what sort of software is readily available. Most of them are pretty nifty with a couple of macros in Excel. So they are excited about the technical possibilities available. But what I notice is, because listen, we build a whole lot of software for a whole lot of people. You have a small hotel chain with 35 hotels. You've got the excited director of revenue management, or whatever the particular title may be, who is excited. But when it comes to adoption within the hotels, it's a different kettle of fish. So I think I would put people back at the front, and I'd say all these machines, they're great, but they're only great if you have the right people implementing the stuff, if you have the right people driving the team in the hotel who has to use the software. Otherwise, it's useless. Now, I hear a whole lot of superlatives. Everybody's the best and the fastest and going to be the best and the number one. I'd say software without the optimal support is useless. I mean, it's so straightforward. If you don't set your revenue management software up properly, or any other software for that matter, it will be useless. So the energy that should be invested at the beginning is big. Obviously, we can, we and probably all the other software companies can recognize the patterns. We would be capable of setting basically everything up on our own without the hotel being involved. But I mean, hotels aren't into that. Hotels want to be involved. They want to understand what's happening, why it's happening. They need to be able to follow. So this James Bond 007, click my eyes twice and all the prices are distributed. I don't reckon the market's ready for that. I mean, it sounds cool, but I haven't met one hotel or hotel chain who wants that. Hotels want to be and this is not meant in a derogatory fashion, hotels want to be helped, they want to be coached, and they want to have the sort of idea, hey, we've still got our hands on the steering wheel. So this is, I think, so much is still people. It's
Yeah.
people to people. If people have a problem, they call the software support. They call the support. And if
Yeah.
the support isn't capable and helpful, and as I know in the hospitality industry, without mentioning any names, but I could mention them all. If you've got a problem and you call some of these big players in the hospitality industry, I mean, open a ticket. They tell you to open a ticket, and then you get some automatic email that your ticket is being dealt with. But if I'm Fred Smith, in the revenue management division of I don't know what hotel chain, I'm not overly interested in making too many tickets. I still like a personal touch, someone who helps me, someone who gives me confidence in what I'm doing and what the system does. Now,
Yeah.
I will be the only podcast who actually says people are important. Everyone else will say how good the software is and that you don't need people. And I totally disagree.
Yeah. Interesting. What do you think? Why do you think that is? What, and from your perspective, I mean, you're very much obviously veering towards the man and machine, and then working in cooperation. So,
Well,
which is great to hear. But is it because we're on the cusp of this technological revolution? Do you think it's a matter of the revenue management function still a bit of mistrust, and they're still, don't feel 100% comfortable handing all this over?
well, I go back to the first statement that I think you made. Um, Technology evolves a lot faster than people do. Now,
Yeah.
the hospitality industry is probably in the last 10 years has evolved more in 10 years than in the last 50 years. But we've still got a long way to go. And I don't think there's a problem that people are involved. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a problem at all. The idea, listen, if you've got some really simple, I'm not going to use the word I was initially going to use. Let's say you've got some really simple, budgety hotel in a big city with 50 rooms or 100 rooms, and it's much of a muchness with all the other budget hotels. I reckon you could just plug it into a system and let the system do the work because you can. But I'd say for the majority of hotels, this is not the solution. It may be, maybe in 10 years with the new generation who are much more comfortable with all things IT. They grew up with nappies and an iPhone in their hand, which I certainly didn't. I don't anyway. So it's an evolution, it's a process, it takes time, no problem. Listen,
Yeah.
Michelle, I'm very, very lucky. The majority of my clients for all things revenue management systems, etc., are professional revenue management companies. So my clients have 50 to 1,000 hotels that they are managing, where they're doing, let's say, outsourced revenue management. They offer sort of all sorts of packages to their clients. So my clients are the revenue management companies themselves who have professional revenue managers who understand my software perfectly, who understand the whole domain of revenue management. So through working with all these professional revenue management companies, we're in a privileged position because we're working with experts who know what they're doing. We're not investing a huge amount of time trying to explain to every small hotel why they need revenue management or what they should do. But the professional knowledge of revenue managers together with our great software, because I think our software is pretty damn good, that works. So it's man and machine, or woman and machine. I don't want to
Yeah,
be
no,
sexist here.
absolutely. No, absolutely. People and machine, definitely.
People and machine, yeah.
People and machine. Let's just draw on your experience to date, and obviously you've seen a lot of change within the industry, which we talked about earlier. And you've got a history of entrepreneurship. What is the secret of getting technological development right from your experience?
Well, getting the right people together to start with. Obviously, I'm going to say this. I have a first class team of developers in Romania, second to none. I mean, Romania is actually, Bill Gates calls it the sort of Silicon Valley of Europe. So the knowledge to develop together with a group of clients, the worst thing you can do is say, I'm going to work for hotel chain X. I hope there isn't there probably is a hotel chain X, but let's say hotel chain XYZ, and we're going to build what you want, because you're going to have a very narrow idea of what a particular client needs, and you're not going to have something that is going to work in the market. So I say a broad group of, let's say, potential clients with a deep understanding of, in this case, revenue management and distribution, and find common denominators and be agile. Don't make some book. The biggest problem is people have I listen on some of your podcasts. People were making predictions for 5 years. Well, listen, I reckon a prediction for 3 months is already risky. So be very, very agile. Don't base whatever you're doing on one client or two clients. So do a bit of decent research. Make sure let's say the pioneer beta clients are deeply knowledgeable, and then do something agile. Agile means step by step, start to use what you build immediately, rather than have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 1-year plan. And then you evolve. It evolves because you see, am I helping my clients? Is this working for my clients? It's not, again, it's not rocket science. So you're not going to hear me keep saying AI and algorithms and
Yeah,
all sorts of bullshit, because
yeah,
we're a software development company. So obviously we can build anything, but you've got to
yeah,
build what people need. So adoption of users, solve problems, pain points. If it's recognizable for your users, if it's recognizable for your a revenue manager who looks at OTA Insights, which has really beautiful reports and information about your competition, and he looks at something else, and he looks at STR Global, and he looks at Benchmarking Alliance, and he looks at Travel Click 360, there, or Forward Keys. I mean, it's endless. There is so much information, but your revenue managers know what they're looking at. They know why they look. Now, if you can bring all of this together and make their life easier and solve problems, then you're already going in a really good direction. And what happens? What happens? Oh, nearly every revenue manager has to send a report to somebody, to the general manager, to the regional manager, to the Timbuktu manager. So these are all things that have to be done. So if you can make sure you really save time and add value, people will adopt, people will start using it. Because this is, I tell you, I hate it. My network administrator always says to me, Adrian, you're using, I don't know which Windows I have, I don't know which Outlook, but it's all some old stuff. And he says, Adrian, this is this is the last century. Let me give you something decent. And me as owner of a software company, I'm reluctant to change anything. Listen, I'll give you an example. I have a BlackBerry telephone, and I now have or had the first Android Chinese BlackBerry simply because I didn't want to move to Apple or anywhere else. So people don't like change. So if you're gonna coax people into the next century, then make it a little bit recognizable and make it really useful. So because adoption is everything. If you've got, listen, I bet you there are so many good software solutions on the market that nobody uses or will ever use. What a waste.
Yeah.
Not rocket
Yeah.
science.
So it's all back to simplification, which you spoke about earlier on. So
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. Where you see what have revenue managers got to look forward to in the next 5 years. But in view of your comment a little bit earlier, saying that it's hard to predict what we're looking forward to in the next 3 months with such rapid change, I'll
No, no,
change
no, no,
that
no, no. Oh, no,
slightly.
no. Okay. Sorry.
No. Go on. Answer
Um,
if you want to comment on that.
well, if we look at Thomas Cook, or I mean, listen, I could mention a whole lot of names of things that have happened that have an absolutely massive impact on the hospitality industry. Now, whether it's a tour operator that goes bankrupt, or an airline that goes bankrupt, or software companies who buy each other, these things we can't actually predict. What we can predict is that the use of machines, to get back to the great title of the Revenue by Design event in London next year, machines will do more and more and more and more. Now, they're not going to replace revenue managers, and revenue managers in the future will probably be called profit managers. And in the future, we won't just be worrying or busy with making sure that about RevPAR and ADR, we'll be sort of looking at total profitability. Now, this in itself means a sort of structural change in operations of hotels, because it's going to be the revenue management software of today is going to be the operational management software of the future. So it's not going to be people or departments. It's going to be something a whole company does. This will definitely happen. You have some examples of some very, very smart, which I'm not going to mention now, very smart hotel management companies. My company, HSDS, is technical partner of a company called Juyo Analytics. So we build software for Juyo, which is owned by Juyo. I mean, they are revolutionizing what's going on because they're dealing with distribution costs properly. It's all good and well that my ADR or my RevPAR is X, Y, Z, but what is it really costing me? And so we're going to have a more sort of macro overview of everything. I think the revenue managers of now will evolve into profit managers, strategic profit managers of the whole hotel. So, and definitely within 10 years. I mean, it will probably be quicker.
Yeah.
But people will always be involved unless I don't want to I'm not going to mention any names, but unless you could have some like really simple product, like these over budgety hotels where there are no people. And I dare say you could, you could do all of that technically, and who cares? And do people add any value? But in the majority of cases, I'd say they do. And it's not because I'm scared. that a good revenue management system won't work out the optimal price. I'm sure if we just let, for example, my system, or probably some of my competitors, definitely some of my competitors, I mean, they're not idiots. I'm sure some of them are extremely capable. They will. The machine will always be better than people in 99.95 cases. But people want to understand why things happen and how they happen. Now, as soon as we really let AI, in inverted commas, take over, then it's pure mathematics. So it is absolutely impossible for anybody to explain why anything is happening. That is a fact, absolute fact. If you want to leave the rudder or the steering wheel or whatever it is you're using to decide what direction you're going in, then you need to be able to manipulate. If you want to be able to manipulate, to steer, then you need to understand why your software does what. And then you can actually influence and change and say, actually, you know what? The ideal price is A, B, C, but for whatever reason, in our whatever philosophy, we don't want to go below whatever it is. So people still like to have the feeling they have control. I'm in Baia Mare now, which is a development center of ours. And I was driving through it was very foggy last night. And I was driving, and I have a very sophisticated German car. And I can talk to it. And I think I have the most sophisticated car people build in Germany. I cannot use shit. I mean, I just thought, why don't they have more buttons? I don't want the sensor to decide that it is misty or it isn't misty or whatever. I want to feel in control. So I reckon I don't know, do English people still make cars? I might look for a more simple car. We like to feel in control.
Yeah.
English make lovely cars. That was not some side comment.
No, absolutely. No, offense taken. I think that's a really positive note, Adriaan, to end on, in terms of the fact that technology is an enhancer to the revenue management function, but people will always be involved. But it's something we've heard time and time again. It's a matter of ensuring that so the revenue managers will always be there. It's just be in a different form. It will be in a more commercial and more strategic and more technological form. And we need to prepare for that, I guess, moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I think.
Super. Thank you so much, Adriaan, for your time today. It's been great to catch up. Really, really interesting to hear your perspective. And we look forward to seeing you at Opportunity 2020 next year when you're hosting a technological showcase.
Yes, well, listen, I'm very much looking forward to the event in February. Thanks very much for this discussion.
Perfect. Thanks, Adriaan. And the same to you. Speak soon. Bye-bye. See you.